Welcome to this video and machine learning walkthrough. Now let's get to the walkthrough. Now as for the example, let's look at the single metric. The first thing we need to do is create a job. We have a current job here, mastering underscore ES underscore 1. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Right now, let's just create a job. Again, as I said earlier, we're going to do the single metric job. So let's look at the single metric job. And from here, we have to choose our data set. As we saw previously, I created an index called server metric. So mine is going to follow this particular index pattern. Now we're on the configuration page. Aggregation, we need to figure out what method of aggregation we want to use. If we're looking at the response time, we want to take and figure out what is considered high and what is considered low. To do that, we need to figure out the average. So once we get the average response time, then we'll know. As a result, we want to look at the average, but we want to look at the high mean. So mean being average, we want to look at the high mean, meaning it will define an anomaly as anything that's over the area of expected performance. Okay, if we were to select mean, then it would select everything that's over and under, whereas low would just simply select under the expected area of performance. So we select high mean. Now we want to select the field. Remember, we said response. There we go. Here we look at the bucket span. Bucket spans can be kind of tricky. The best bucket span is really data specific. Training a model in Elasticsearch is quick and turnkey, so feel free to play around with different bucket sizes, as each will affect the way your model generalizes to your data. Now that's very important because the goal of machine learning is to generalize your model. If your model is too general, then it's considered underfitting. If it's too specific, it's overfitting. The ideal is to find a balance in between. Generally speaking, 5 to 60 minutes work in most cases for machine generated data. Here you see that we list things in minutes. Quickly, I'll mention that the algorithm here, what it does is when it analyzes data, it groups the data into buckets. And these buckets are based on a time span, so 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. What we're going to try here is 30 minutes. I want to point your attention to here where it says use full server data. If you want to use the full data, then you click this option. Okay? And I'm selecting that because I do want to use the full data set to train the model. Now we name the job. So let's call it Mastering ES2. Mastering ES2. And now let's create the job. As you can see, while the job is being created, it progresses through. You see it as the model trains. Let's look at the results. So here we have the results. And click here and you'll see. Now, what the machine learning application does is it calculates the probability of an anomaly occurring. And this is where your anomaly score comes from. That's this 97. And obviously, the higher the anomaly is, the higher the score. The lower the score. So anything that breaks this area represents an anomaly. One other thing to look at, which can be really helpful, is the Anomaly Explorer. Just by clicking on this, it'll give you the information regarding the anomaly. Now quickly, I want to do one thing. We created the number 2. So the number 2 here, if we can recall, number 2. All right, here, let's just look here. An anomaly was considered 2.4 here with the upper bounds of 2.37, lower bounds 2.3. Let's see how buckets influence our overall results. In this particular example, if you look here, what you'll see is, for example, your upper bounds is 2.38 and your lower bounds is 2.29. This is actually higher and wider than the other. So your upper bounds is higher, your lower bounds is lower, which means the definition of anomaly overall has changed. So whereas the previous one, you crossed over into the anomaly area, for this particular one, you did not, because this one has a different definition of what is an anomaly and what isn't. The point I'm making is that when you change the bucket size, it affects the overall performance of your model. So you want to look, and from a very basic perspective, you could run the same exact model by changing the bucket size and see the definition of an anomaly and see if that fits what you're looking for. Is this an anomaly? Do you consider 2.41 to be a warning, or is 2.41 or anything over 2.4 really an anomaly? If it is, then you want to adjust the bucket size accordingly. This is why a lot of people in machine learning would suggest that you actually take the time to play around with it, because the generalization of your model will be affected based on that. When you have a model, you want to actually set the model up to receive data, which means you want to feed data to this model. To do that, you have to set a time span. So you press the start button, and then you look and you set a time span. So let's say, for example, if you want this model to start here, and this will specify the end time. The model at that point is prepared for data. And that concludes this video. Up next, we'll look at some tips for production and security.